The one possible way that YNW Melly can beat his case all revolves around his 6th grade best friend named Adrian Davis.
It's all about Davis's testimony. I mean, they called him witness. The question is, was he believable? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that his demeanor was great on the stand. I don't think he got overly emotional. I don't think he got combative with a very combative district attorney, which is always helpful. I think the biggest issue that they're going to have is what's his motive to lie, right? That's any eyewitness that you have. What is their motive to lie? Why should the jury believe them over the science they heard for weeks prior? And I think that's going to be the larger issue, his friendship with Melly, and how can the prosecution frame that as the reason that he would have to come in and lie to the jury. But as far as how he testified, his demeanor, the way that he held up under cross, I think he did a great job.
Adrian Davis has been best friends with YNW Melly since the 6th grade, giving an amazing testimony for Melly by sharing the first alibi in the court case. However, YNW Juvie's mother thinks otherwise, calling him a liar on social media. However, the opening question, Adrian Davis would reveal that YNW Melly wasn't even at the crime scene.
Are you 100% sure that Melly got into the red Mitsubishi to go home?
Yes.
Are you 100% sure that this young man learned of his friends at the exact same time you learned of it?
Yes.
And that was at the house?
Yes.
Are you 100% sure that when people were getting on the phone, that this young man was looking for his phone to call people?
Yes.
This is case breaking. As Adrian Davis just revealed, YNW Melly exited the Jeep that he was driving in with Bortland, Sack Chaser, and Juvie halfway home, and YNW Melly was then picked up by the red vehicle that was parked in the exact same spot as Melly's Jeep at the recording studio. As YNW Melly was picked up, as the YNW members in the red vehicle needed somebody with house keys to let them into the YNW crib.
Okay, so the only two people you know who had a key to the house was this young man.
Yes.
And Cortland Henry.
Yes.
Did you see this young man unlock the door of the house?
Yes.
Who was the last person to get out of the red Mitsubishi to go inside the house?
Trayvon. He was in the cot still asleep.
Did you see where Melly went?
To his room.
And where was his bedroom?
When you first walked in the house, it came missing. It's right down the left.
Okay. This is a 1 or 2 story house?
2.
As Davis mentions, there's only 2 sets of house keys, one owned by YNW Melly and the other one being from YNW Bortland. However, Bortland was the driver of the other vehicle, and maybe they were going elsewhere where they needed YNW Melly to open the door. However, Davis does claim that he watched YNW Melly walk to the front door, open the door, and then walk straight to his bedroom to go to sleep. While sleeping for roughly an hour or 2, members inside of the YNW crib would begin screaming, yelling for everybody to wake up as they just learned what happened to YNW Juvie and YNW Sack Chaser.
Did there come a time in the early morning hours that you were woken up and heard some distressing news?
Yes.
What did you hear?
The second Julie.
When you heard that, did you see Melly in the house?
Yes.
Did you see Melly how he was dressed in the house?
Yes.
What was he wearing?
Shorts and a t-shirt, I think.
Okay.
Davis saw YNW Melly inside of the house, waking up out of bed with a t-shirt and shorts on when exiting his bedroom, as Davis would learn about the quote-unquote drive-by at the exact same time that YNW Melly did. This is case-breaking information, as if he's telling the truth, which is a big if, then YNW Melly would have a strong alibi, proving that he was not at the crime scene when the crime occurred, meaning that YNW Melly would beat his case. However, Davis would continue sharing what was happening inside of the YNW house ever since they were learning the news about the situation.
Upon hearing that Sack and Juvie were, what did you guys do?
We were already dressed and stuff, so we just left with Fredo's house.
Was anybody upset or crying?
Yeah, we all were crying.
Was this young man crying?
Yes.
Are you sure of that?
Positive.
And where'd you go?
Fredo's house.
Did there come a time after you got to the house of Fredo Bang that Cortland Henry showed up?
Yes.
Did Cortland Henry tell you what happened?
Yeah, he said it was a drive-by.
Davis mentions that he 100% saw YNW Melly crying inside of the YNW house, showing emotions for what just happened to his two best friends. With everybody dressed already, the YNW house would pack up and drive over to rapper Fredo Bang's house early on in the morning, hours after the crime, where Davis does mention that YNW Melly was driven to Fredo's by the people that were inside of the YNW crib. However, it's when Davis would mention that YNW Melly was missing his cell phone the entire time, which now starts to answer a lot of the questions that we had.
By the way, when you first learned that Anthony Williams and Christopher Thomas at the house with Melly, did anyone get on the phone?
Yeah.
Did anyone have any problem locating their phone?
Yes.
Who was that?
Jamel.
Now this starts to make sense as to why YNW Melly's cell phone was in several different areas when tracked by GPS tracking with the FBI, as the cell phone must have fell out of YNW Melly's pockets when he was transferring vehicles on the side of the road, going from the Jeep that the crime happened in and into the red vehicle.
So now the trial is over and we know that YNW Melly's attorneys had only issued out one witness, this gentleman seen right here, and then basically rested their case. Now some legal analysts have come forward and stated that having this witness as their final witness, specifically YNW Melly, was kind of a brilliant plan. Because having him as the final witness, it basically sealed the deal and solved the mystery of why was YNW Melly's phone all over the place and why was YNW Melly's phone inundated with other image and text messages of his friends. Well, that's because his friends used his phone according to them. And secondly, the reason why YNW Melly, according to his defense, his phone was zipping and zooting all over the city is because, well, when they exchanged vehicles, he left it.
Right before Davis was about to leave the stand, there was one last question, where Davis would thankfully explain why YNW Melly seemed so happy at a recording set hours after the passings of Juvie and Sack Chaser.
You see him? Melly still turned regardless of what happened this early morning. He's still out here being very positive. Turned still. Hey! The dog still turned, regardless of what happened. You already know.
As Davis would mention that YNW Melly was being paid to do this music video. It was a contracted event, meaning there is a time frame where he needs to return the footage in. So he had to do it or he would have lost a lot of money.
Were you aware whether or not Melly had a contractual agreement to do a video that day?
Yeah, it was something like that. I know he probably would have lost a lot of money if he didn't go to the music video. He was upset.
Was Melly crying at Fredo Bang's house?
Yes.
Were you crying?
Yes.
Because you all grew up together?
Yes.
Yeah.
YNW Melly was just trying to put himself into a good mood so then the video would turn out well. And with Davis doing so well on the stand, revealing that he saw YNW Melly at home when the crime happened, and even remembers picking up YNW Melly on the side of the street, Melly's defense team didn't need anyone else to testify, and they didn't even need Melly to share his side either.
And if you don't testify, I'm going to instruct the jury that you have a right not to testify, and they can't consider that, hold that against you. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
So my question, I guess, is did you have enough time to talk about this issue about you testifying or not testifying? Did you have enough time to discuss that with your attorneys?
Yes, sir.
Did they answer all your questions?
Yes, sir.
And what is your decision?
I will not be testifying.
You will not be testifying.
No, sir.
Is anyone forcing you or coercing you to make this decision?
No, sir.
Anybody make any promises or on the contrary make to get you not to testify?
No, sir.
This is your free and voluntary decision?
Yes, sir.
As YNW Melly has a lot of positives going his way, making him look innocent. Prosecutors announced that YNW Melly did this crime to move up ranks within a street team. However, it was later revealed YNW Melly was never in a street team.
Now, Danny Polo had admitted that YNW Melly was actually being recruited by 2 different sets. And based off of the text message thread between the different individuals trying to recruit Melly, Melly was not replying. Melly stated weeks later that he was so busy doing radio interviews and shows that he just didn't have time to reply. And if you go back and read the text messages, those recruiters were basically begging Melly to reply back. And he didn't. Because Melly was an up-and-coming rapper who had a ton of money and ambition, and any of these different groups would love to have him under their roster. Because Melly wasn't interested in being a he was being labeled as somebody who was false flagging. It's possible that it was Shine that did the drive.
YNW Melly was not answering the recruitment calls, even though people in street teams were messaging him multiple times a day. This would even lead to 2 witnesses making YNW Melly look really innocent rather than their job, which is to make him look guilty. As an FBI agent would take the stand, this FBI agent specializes in cell phone data research, where we would see a report of YNW Melly's lawyer questions the FBI agent that analyzed Melly's phone at the time of the crime.
Based on the information, you can't really tell the court precisely which locations these phones are following in, can you?
One of the limitations of cellular analysis is that you can only say a general area where the device would be at a given time.
All right. So even with the general analysis, all of the steps that we've gone through for about 4 or 5 hours, at the end of the day, you can never give an exact location.
True.
And could you tell if somebody was walking around a car with the phone? Would you be able to tell that?
No.
So it'd be your testimony that this phone, 9807, could be from here to here, correct?
Yes.
And what was the distance?
Making it very clear inside of the courtroom that they couldn't pinpoint the exact location of Melly's cell phone, once again leaving reasonable doubt that the phone might have not even been at the crime scene. However, when the DNA specialist took the stand, Melly looked even more innocent, as his job was to go over DNA research on items that were found at the scene of the crime, which goes on to read, DNA analyst confirms YNW Melly's DNA was not found on multiple items that were recovered at the crime scene.
So going to item number 22, the swab from the Gucci sandals. We're able to compare the profile from Mr. Devins as opposed to the profile developed from those sandals.
I did, and he was excluded.
The stain on the front of the t-shirt, item number 23. We're able to compare Mr. Devins' profile to that.
I did a comparison, and he was again excluded.
What about item number 24, the cutting of the stain of the rear of the t-shirt?
After comparisons were done, he was excluded.
Okay, then on item number 25, the swab of the stain from the Air Jordans.
Again, an exclusion.
Going on to item number 26, the swab from the yellow jacket.
An exclusion as well.
And in terms of the item number 27 and 28, the swabs at the Gatorade bottles, what were the results on that?
Those were both exclusions.
The only spot that had YNW Melly's DNA was on the car door handle. And if you remember earlier on in the video, Davis did mention that Melly left that vehicle to go inside of the red car, meaning he had to touch the door handle a few times. However, there is some hard evidence against YNW Melly, which started with the lead detective on the stand against Melly, where he would reveal this text message to the world.
The PC Gambino account asked him if he was okay, and his response was, "I did that," and placed a smiley face emoji.
And the next message from 10/26/2018 at 16:02 from Eastern Standard Time. The YNW Melly count says what?
After that, S-H-H-H-H.
And could you please stand and point on the right side of the screen exactly which part you're saying where the YNW Melly account says, I did that?
I did that. This is the thread ID. This is the text. This is the author. This is the recipient. Then you come down here, same thing. The ID is for the actual message, which is just specific that one message. Then the thread ID is the actual continuing message.
For more context on this text message, after the passings in 2018, somebody would message YNW Melly on Instagram asking, hey, are you okay? Tell me something. Where YNW Melly would literally reply saying, I did that, with a happy face emoji. Now, once this was being shared inside of the courtroom, YNW Melly was seen covering his face, looking pretty embarrassed, and it was pretty concerning watching him do this. This would also be their last piece of evidence to show the jury, which does make sense as it makes them look the most guilty.
So the state has officially rested their case on the YNW Melly trial. And starting tomorrow at 9 a.m., Melly's defense team will bring in their witnesses. Now, it seems as though Melly's attorneys are going to be offering a very short defense because according to the judge, sometime on Wednesday or Thursday, they're going to be doing their closing arguments and then the jury will be sequestered to finally take the case, which means the jury gets to deliberate and determine whether Melly's going to be found guilty or innocent. Now, Melly's attorneys did file a motion for a judgment of acquittal. So essentially, Melly's attorneys are arguing that the reason why they asked for the motion for a judgment of acquittal is because the prosecutor has a circumstantial-based case, but the circumstantial-based case is only going to lead the jury to start trying to take that Swiss cheese and fill in those holes themselves. Because the prosecutor, according to Melly's defense, has not offered the jury any substantive evidence to be able to fill those holes.
However, it was now time for YNW Melly's lawyers to cross-examine the lead detective, as Melly's lawyers realized this lead detective did some questionable police work to YNW Melly's manager.
Did you, as a trained investigator, Jameson Francois, to be deported to Haiti, even though he's been in this country since 5 years?
Yes, sir.
Did you, in fact, that he would not get fed and get any medicine in the jails?
I don't know about that in the conversations.
Do you think a witness who tells you something that you don't like really gets to the truth?
Objection or irrelevant.
When you questioned Jameson Francois, were you alone or did you bring immigration officers with you?
We were at the Chrome Detention Center, so of course the immigration officer had to be.
Why this is so important and why YNW Melly's lawyer is screaming is due to 100K Track giving that lead detective on the stand YNW Melly's cell phone. He had no choice or else he would have been kicked out of the United States. And that cell phone he gave practically has 90% of the evidence the prosecution used against Melly. On the cell phone also contained incriminating text messages between Melly and his girlfriend at the time.
Moving on to Friday, November 9th, 2029, 20 UTC, 2018. Message from Melly, Montana to, again, that baby. What does that one say?
You don't with me anyways. I peeped it. You can slide, but God knows I wasn't in her and real breaking. You spoiled everything was given to you. You act like a some slide. I keep Borton with cuz
with YNW Melly stating that he will remain loyal to Bortland all the way until the end, as Bortland did one of the realest things in his life for him and would never switch. Now I really wonder what that could be, as this evidence would then lead us into the most serious evidence against Melly, which starts with a report of forensic expert Sergeant Williams in the Melly case explains how it couldn't have been a drive-by.
Assignment, which is to determine if this is a drive-by. And my determination was that this is not a drive-by. and it's based upon this picture here, which is a very good picture to describe it. All of these rounds are done. One is done at a stationary position. The at a stationary position when all but one of these rounds are going in. The one round that has some movement in it, which is round site L here, the actually moving in that to create the little bit of a that you see there.
Okay, a lot of information in that answer, so let's break it down a little bit. You mentioned so I'm going to zoom in on site F.
This forensic expert took note of every single hole that was inside of the vehicle and then used what is called the stick method to find out how the holes were created, including the direction of where it would come from. And sadly, YNW Melly's seat where he was sitting kinda showed a perfect angle.
Number, you said 17 outside the car. How many rounds were inside of the car?
3.
And can you exclude the for Mr. Williams and Mr. Thomas as coming from outside of the car?
Yes. From the driver's side back seat.
As to the shot that Christopher Thomas, where did that come from?
Driver's side back seat.
No. Is it possible for there to have been 2 inside that car?
No.
Why not?
There is no time.
So with Sergeant Williams practically guaranteeing that this crime must have happened from the person in the back left seat of the car, we would then see YNW Juvie's mother to go to the stand as she needed to state who was sitting where inside of the vehicle, proving where YNW Melly sat, including where her son sat.
Can you state your name, your full legal name for the jury?
Leon Phillips.
Okay. And are you related to one of the victims in this case?
Yes, I am.
How so?
I'm his mother.
And who is that?
Christopher Thomas.
Pause it at 2:19:15. Ms. Phillips, did you see who entered into the occupants who entered into that gray Jeep?
Mm-hmm.
And is that a yes?
Yes.
Do you recognize where your son entered that gray Jeep?
Yes.
Which seat, if you can identify for the jury?
He got in the back seat on the right hand side.
Did you recognize the individual that got into the back seat on the left side, the rear driver's side?
Yes.
And who was that individual?
Jamel.
And Jamel, is that the defendant, Jamel Demons?
Yes, ma'am.
With the jury now hearing that the crime must have happened inside of the vehicle, as well as YNW Juvie's mother revealing where YNW Melly was seated, is this enough evidence on YNW Melly to overtake the testimony from Davis?